one of the teachings in Buddhism is called karuna, which is a Sanskrit word, I believe, for compassion. And compassion is a word that is used quite often. The idea of not feeling for, it's not like a sympathy for someone. When we talk about compassion, just like the word compassion came up a few times in the Maitri Bhavana practice that Shoka read this morning for people who are ill and people who have passed away. Just a way of trying to send them our best wishes and know that we're supportive of people who are having more difficulty than we are. And so compassion isn't particularly feeling sorry for people or feeling sympathetic necessarily. There might be some of that there. You could say that if you're truly compassionate with someone, that someone is sitting across from you, you won't know it. I'll say that again. If you're actually compassionate for someone that you're in a relationship with, or is your partner, or your coworker, or your child, or your father, you actually are compassionate, you won't know it. If you know it, that's called self-centeredness or ego. In other words, sometimes we have the motivation to be kind or be compassionate or whatever word you want to use, to feel sorry for, feel sympathetic for. Sometimes we have the motivation to do that, not so much because we're that concerned with the other person, because we'd like to feel better. We'd like to be the person who's forgiving, compassionate, friendly. I'm always compassionate. I'm always sending out my good wishes to everyone. Very much about identity, our own identity. From the point of view of these teachings, that has to go. When I say that has to go, I don't mean it doesn't have to go anywhere. We just stop doing anything with it. If you stop doing, anytime you meddle with anything, push on it, pull on it, or look away from it, or distract yourself from it, it somehow gets energy to keep going. So you could say that compassion is more like feeling with. If someone is having difficulty, and their compassion is actually there, you'll feel that, you'll resonate. It's like the image I'm always using with the striking the drum, and until Scott painted these windows all shut. That window, I think the first window there used to rattle because it had compassion for the drum. Boom, brr, boom, brr. Wasn't exactly like that. That's more like a bumblebee. So I'm just using that image to help you see that if you're compassionate, if there is compassion happening for another person, and you are, and that is actually occurring, then your self-centeredness is way, way down. Your feeling about being a special person who cares for others. Sometimes people take up careers because they want to help others. But when it comes right down to getting into it, they realize how much work that is. Really helping others is, whether you're working in a hospital or whether you're a psychiatrist, psychologist, a therapist, or whether you're working in some other way of helping others. So I'm very happy to have a conversation, although I don't really have conversations when I sit up here. But I would like to interact or communicate with any of you here who have questions. I can continue to talk about compassion and bore everyone to death. But if you have questions about it, then I can respond to your question, and it may or may not help you. But if there's compassion there, then you won't be too concerned about whether you're being helped. Not yet. No, you can go ahead. I just thought, oh my gosh, I don't have compassion for the poor guy.
It seems a lot of times in the Buddhist teachings, they wish happiness for other beings.
Yes. Just a practice. And that's what we did today. It's just a practice. So it's just a way of, it's just like when you come in and meditate. You know, it's like meditation. You know you're doing meditation correctly. I'm going to repeat this one twice too, if it doesn't work. If it works, you're doing it incorrectly. You're actually doing it as a form of entertainment. Oh, this is so wonderful. I've meditated. I feel at one with the universe. The sun is shining. The flowers are blooming. Butterflies. It's horse shit. I mean, we're talking about taking this whole sense of being a human being for granted and just using our body-mind complex to just entertain ourselves. And what's being said is, what's being suggested, what's being pointed at, is if there actually is compassion, you won't know it. What was your question again?
Well, it seems like happiness is just a preconception, and it doesn't lead to the end of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we then wishing happiness for beings if it just perpetuates the cycle of samsara?
That's a good question. Why do you think it is? What's it look like to you? You get to ask me a question. I'm asking you one.
Well,
First thought, best thought.
Typical beings do not have the capacity to engage in this type of practice.
Yeah.
And so we're just exterminating the fire because it hurts.
Okay, so I'm ready to answer you now. You ready to hear?
Yes, sir.
You're not doing it for others. You're doing it for yourself. You're actually changing your attitude so that you have an attitude of being, of sending out vibrations or radiating or changing your thought patterns so that those thought patterns in the relative sense are positive. That's all you're doing. So you may be affecting others and you may not be. It's hard to know. So you're just changing your attitude. You're just going to send out your good wishes to others.
How is that different than being self-centered?
Same. Question?
Well, how is that compassion then if you're self-centered?
Because it's not about getting rid of being self-centered. It's just seeing that there is no self. There is no self, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have to transcend your ego. If you're trying to get rid of your ego, good luck, because it's not real. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed when you try to take that part of yourself that you don't like, you try to push it down, it goes whoop. It's like, what is that you push down in the water and it comes up the other side? Something that it's been a long time since I've played with toys in the bathtub. A rubber duck. So it's like anytime you push down, it fights back. But if you do nothing with it, then it's just there. It may stay there, it may not. More?
Well, it seems like what you talk about sending out positive waves
Yes.
is another form of meddling. It's doing something.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'm not saying you shouldn't do anything. But if people are suffering, then you send them your good wishes. But you don't necessarily go over to their house and tell them they should convert to Buddhism. Or tell them they should meditate. Or be more like me, meditate. You respect them. You keep your distance. So that's why I say it's more about you. You're here. You're trying to change. You're endeavoring to change your attitude and just relax into whatever arises. There's actually a slogan in the Tisha's 7 Points of Mind Training that says, relax your attitude or change your attitude and relax as it is. It's just a way of pulling you out of that warfare mind. It's a path, yes.
How is the practice of compassion different from the fruition of practice or of compassion?
What do you think the fruition of compassion is?
I don't know, but I guess we're talking about, we're kind of, it seems, circling around.
Yeah.
The fruition.
So as long as it looks like things are separate, as long as it looks like I'm okay and you're not okay, or there's good people and bad people, as long as it looks like you have to go to war, we have to push down the bad things and raise the good things, then there's going to be some kind of warfare going on. But the fundamental situation is everything is perfect as it is. That doesn't mean we don't have to practice. So if there's realization, then you realize there's really nothing to change. More.
Just listening to Jigme's question, and
Yeah, I was listening to it too.
Yeah, I was just curious, in what way these relative practices are helpful when they're not quite the mark.
Well, I think you're saying it. I mean, your awareness is about, you have to do the relative practice before you can see that it's not it. If you don't do it, then you won't see it. Then you'll just have thoughts about it. Of, I like it, I don't like it, it works, it doesn't work. Sometimes it works, this practice works, that doesn't work. I had to do hundreds of thousands of mantras and so on, more than that actually, to really see what that was all about, to really see clearly what that was about. You actually can't accomplish that high ideal that we have in our mind. We can't really actually, we have that there and we go towards that, but then we discover that it was already there. It was there anyway. It was there all the time.
Is there something we can do to begin putting others before ourselves?
Yes, the first thing you do to put others before yourself is to see how much you put yourself first. Have you noticed that? It's always about how I feel. How I feel about. Well, I don't feel that way. Or I feel this way, I feel this way, I think this, I think that. You have to see the way in which you're self-centered in order for that to start to soften up. That's the practice of it. More?
Is there a meditation and action form of that?
Sure.
What would that be?
When somebody comes at you with anything, even if it looks like they're attacking you, don't respond. Hold your seat. If you fight back, I mean, we got war. If somebody is suffering so much that they come after you because they're so miserable and they're coming after you and they want to hit you, correct you, get out of their way for one thing. But don't use that whole thing coming at you as some kind of justification for it. Now you get to hit them back or you get to do anything to them. You have to hold your seat. And the way you can hold your seat, learn to do that, is by sitting on this cushion or any cushion, sitting still and see the way the mind keeps jumping to conclusions. I like this, I don't like it. I like it, I don't like it. Constantly. You have to find a way to hold your seat. Not easy. More?
Not yet.
Yes, Sheldon.
We don't have to look very far to see that there's not a lot of compassion in the world. How do we look closely at that? What's the best way to look closely at how little compassion there is around us?
Look here. Look at the closest relationship that you have with anyone, whatever that is, and see how you put yourself first. It starts in little tiny increments. My ideas, what I think is true, what I think is happening. It's called ego or self-centeredness. You don't have to get rid of ego yet. You just need to see, as far as this particular way of working with the mind, you just have to see that the ego or the self, who we think we are, is not solid. And so we're actually defending, we're trying to make it solid, and we're trying to defend it against others that are attacking it. Go ahead.
So it seems like this lack of compassion is like just a big pile of dirt that's just piling in on us all the time.
Okay, the lack of compassion is like a big pile of dirt pounding in us.
Everywhere you look, you can't look every piece of media, people, the way people act on the street.
Okay, what's your question?
So how do we look at ourselves when all this stuff is piling in on us all the time?
Just like we were doing for 15, 20 minutes today, or from the beginning. Actually, all the time we're doing the sutras, you need to be looking at your mind. And you can't really do that, of course, if you've only done these sutras the first time. It's just a bunch of bizarre stuff that has no meaning. I know that. But you have to start somewhere. And maybe you won't. Maybe that'll be enough. Maybe you won't do that. But the sutras are not about chanting some kind of or saying some kind of weird thing. It's about doing something, repeating it, repeating it, repeating it. You won't even know what these sutras are until you've done them probably, maybe 1,000 times. And even then, it'll only be a little bit of inkling of what that's about. It's a practice. Like you can't sit on the cushion for 15, 20 minutes every 3 or 4 days. It seems if this is the way you want to work with the mind, there's nothing to sell here, nothing to believe. I'm not saying everybody should do what we're doing, but if you're in here, then you probably need to hear what I'm saying, maybe once. So it seems to be necessary to sit down on the cushion, hold very still, and see the confusion that is in the world is also in your mind. More. Brittany.
I think yesterday you talked about when you were answering some of Jimmy's questions
Yes.
about putting yourself first taking care of yourself so then you can help others.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder how could I or we do that while putting others before ourselves?
So start by sitting on the cushion and finding out who you are. If you're confused about who you are, if you're getting your value or your identity from others, if you're getting who you are, what this is from what other people think about what you're thinking, you're going to suffer. You might get out of it occasionally when you go to go roller skating or something.
But how can you not get your identity from others when you're not separate from them? You're constantly interacting with them.
By sitting down and strengthening your awareness so you can see that who you actually are is discontinuous. Identities come and go and come and go. And when someone outside, if we're not clear about who we are, then if someone criticizes us from out here, we react. You can't say that about me. How, you don't know me? Or I didn't say it that way. That's not what I meant. And then the other person will do whatever they do. It's just warfare on a little scale. But it's the same thing that's going on between this country and other countries. Same thing that's going on in Belgium. All the warfare going on. People yelling at each other and wearing T-shirts and holding signs. War. Choosing side. You choose sides, you'll lose. I mean, right after you win, and then you lose. You win, then you lose, then you win, then you lose. So train the mind to see what is true, and everything starts to settle down. And you have to make friends, as my teacher Trungpa Rinpoche said. You have to make friends with if you can make friends with this person, then you don't have any enemies, because you're not at war with anyone anywhere. This doesn't mean that if somebody attacks you, you won't get out of their way, or maybe take the baseball bat out of their hand. Doesn't mean that you're not. It isn't like you're so enlightened that you're nuts, and you just let people kill you or be mean to you. But you won't do it. You won't react out of ego or out of defensiveness. You'd act out of some kind of clarity, and also you would act out of what this talk is about: compassion. You would see that the reason why somebody is being mean to you, why somebody's attacking you, why somebody's growling at you, is because they're suffering. People, especially people that love you, relationship things are especially hard. You hear somebody that loves you, and yet they're going after you. They're upset with you. And it's because there's so much suffering that they're trying to cover up. And one of the ways you can do that is to ignore it by what? Going to war with blaming something else. There's a practice in Buddhism, and it's actually, I think it's in Tisha's 7 Points of Mind Training, where it says, drive all blames into one. So anytime there's any blame for anything, you take it. It's not because it's your fault. It's because this is a way of changing that attitude of going to war with everything. If you really see someone who is giving you a hard time, if you've really looked at your own mind and you've seen the way you give yourself a hard time, you've seen the way you suffer, then when you get up off the cushion, you'll see more. It takes a while. You'll see more clearly that when someone you used to fight with, you're not quite so interested in fighting with them anymore. People quite often, if they meditate for a few years, 3 or 4 years, especially in this particular form, notice that they're no longer fighting with that person, that mother, that father, that uncle, or that brother. Things are not quite the same. They notice when they look at them, they can see that they're miserable. They're unhappy. And the way they cover it up is by going after you. Why don't you do this? You need to clean up your act. You shouldn't live that way. People even saying, why do you do that meditation thing? Have you noticed that? Have you noticed how people fight over, they'll start a fight in order to not feel something? It's hard to watch that. It's hard to see someone, especially someone you love and care about, fight with you when they can't see what you can actually see. You can see that they're unhappy. That's why they're attacking you. They think they're attacking you because you're wrong and you've done something wrong, but you can see that they're unhappy. Michael.
Can you give some examples of how we fight with ourselves?
Yeah, I can. We just did. Probably everyone in this room did it, except me, of course, because I'm the smart guy here. But we all sit down and have objections to things. I shouldn't be thinking that. I should be thinking more of that. I don't like this. I like this. Any position you take, it adds that you'll do that with the rest of your life. Stop taking positions on things. Take everything in your inventory that is an opinion or a belief, and take another look at it. See if it's really true. If it's just something you do because you don't want to really look deeply into it. So this is why meditation is not about feeling serene and happy, and at least not the way it's taught here. It's about seeing what is true. So you can fundamentally begin to go out into the world and stop making a nuisance of yourself to others. More? Yes.
What about helping others to ease their suffering?
Get permission. Don't step into someone else's territory with your idea about what they need. Well, you need this. Unless you're me, which I can do whatever I want.
Right on.
Yeah. So what am I saying here? I'm saying be a little bit tentative about doing that. First, talk to them, look them in the eyes, and see if they're really ready to receive any help from you, or to see if this person that you would like to help is so much caught up in being a victim that they're not ready for anybody to help. They'll just use your help as some way to fuel their poor me feeling.
What about if helping them is in a violent manner?
How so?
War.
So you're going to go to war with someone to help them?
No, like country-wise, for instance.
Like we're going to go to war with some other country to help that country?
Yes, sir.
And what about it?
To ease someone's suffering with or without someone else's consent.
Yeah, don't go to war. Yeah, and the way you do that is you don't go to war to go. You don't go to war with going to war. So we don't go in and carry a bunch of signs that say no more war. Waste of energy. Someone who's doing that, and this is just a way of understanding. It doesn't make me right and them wrong. I would say to anyone who wanted to do that, I said, you should trust yourself. You should do whatever you want to do with your life. Don't listen to me. If you know what to do, go do it. Live your life. You're going to live a whole lot of lives. You might have to live thousands of lives before you see what is true. Good luck. When I say good luck, I'm just saying good luck. Do the best you can. If you need my help, come and ask me. It might look like a sales pitch up here, but it is not. Yes.
If you find yourself in the middle of a political rally or
Yes.
metaphorically, people are upset and you're in practicing compassion feeling with, so then you're angry too. How'd
you get in that rally?
I don't know. It's in the office when people are talking about voting, and it's anywhere.
Go back to your seat. I'm saying don't participate in it. I mean, a little bit. If they're complaining about Donald Trump, then that's okay. I'm saying a little bit. That's why Buddhism is called the middle way. A little bit. Interact a little bit, but don't necessarily go in and be for and against. It's just a waste of energy. It might make you feel good. It might make you feel like we're all on this side and not on that side. These guys are wrong. These guys are right. It's the warfare mentality that's so hard. Any more on that the question? The gentleman in the black.
No, sir.
So did you see what I meant by that?
Yes, sir.
Could you paraphrase what I just said to you?
Don't go to war unless you have to.
That's not too bad. I like that. That's not bad. I'll take that. Yes, sir. In college.
Is it? So are you saying that it's wrong if you're helping people, even if it's a selfish reason?
I don't do right and wrong, but
Okay.
you could change the way you said that.
Okay. Let's say, so if you're helping somebody and they get the help
Yeah.
they need or that they want,
Okay.
but your motivation for it is selfish, is that bad? I mean, is that bad? Is it inappropriate? I don't know how to say
I
it.
know where you're getting. So I would say I wouldn't say it's not bad. I mean, but the important thing. What is your name, sir?
Ian.
So Ian, the most important thing you can remember in any of these transactions or whatever is happening, any of this activity, is bring awareness to it so you know about your motivation. You don't have to change your motivation. You don't have to say, oh, I've got to stop being so self-centered. All that does is reinforce the self, which is unreal in the first place. There is no solid being anywhere. If you think there's a solid being, then you'll be hurt by criticisms, and you'll feel good from compliments. If somebody compliments you and you feel good, that's your ego. If somebody criticizes you and you feel hurt, that's your ego. If you at some point you will be able to hear criticisms and hear compliments without having any particular change in your own particular consciousness. So yes, help people, but just be aware how much of that is about you being a helping person, this wonderful person who helps others. And you got any extra money?
I'm a college student. I'm broke.
Well, I'm a monk. I'm broke. Michael.
Buddhism seems to start with the observation that there is suffering in the world. That seems to be, if you study it at all, that's where it kind of begins, that observation. But how would you define suffering?
Wanting things to be different than they are. If things are a certain way and you want them to be different, it's going to be painful. Which doesn't mean that if something is, we're having difficulty with something, that we wouldn't interact with it or do something. But we need to really have respect for other people. Allow people to experience their karma. Allow people to experience their mind themselves, rather than tell them who they are, explain things to them. Unless it's me, which I get to do this. But what I'm saying here is, what out of your life, you're in here for an hour and I'm telling you some things. You by coming in the room, you basically give me permission to do this. Even if someone invited you here and say, you ought to hear this, what this old man's got to say. Still, you don't have to do it. I've often said, and I'll say it right now, forget everything I said. When you leave, forget it. And if there's something about something I said that you can't forget, then maybe that's something you could reflect on. More questions? Yes, sir.
Trungpa Rinpoche talks about karuna or compassion coming out of shunyata or emptiness.
Yes.
But when I look around and I see so much suffering and nothing I can do changes that, and then I have this feeling of emptiness also.
Feeling of emptiness is not emptiness.
It's my
that's relative
perception
truth.
Of emptiness.
Yeah, it's full empty. That's why it says in the Heart Sutta, we chanted in Japanese, just deliberately so nobody could understand it. Is form is emptiness, emptiness is form. So anything here, this is empty of what you think it is. It's empty. It's not empty of being a stick, but it's empty of what you think it is. If you think it's my scepter, which I can bless everybody, or if you think it's the tongue of a devil, or if you think it's a snake who can't make up his mind, But if you see that it's empty of anything to think about it, then it's that kind of emptiness. Emptiness is also full, non-dual, not two. Anytime you posit anything, anytime you say compassion, what's the opposite of compassion?
Aggression,
No, that's the opposite of passion.
hatred.
Close.
Self-centeredness.
Not exactly.
No.
You see what I'm doing? Just disagree with everything. Actual compassion, as a word, of course, has its opposites, but what it is doesn't have any opposites, because you're just no longer separating yourself from anything. It's not separate. The fundamental truth of this livingness, this beingness that we are, is not separate. Doesn't mean there aren't parts. There's all kinds of parts. The example I'm always using, and I'll use it again today, is this is a hand, and the way it becomes a hand is because it has parts, fingers. You can't take one finger in the other room and still have a hand. So this is the not separate part. But we think we're more important than the thumb's more important than a little finger. Maybe a dumb image, but it's that kind of a thing. We think some things are higher and lower. We keep doing that all the time, rather than seeing that even no matter who or what is happening, that it's not separate from everything else, from the entire matrix. More questions are good. Then shoot.
How is resonating with another's difficulty or positivity, anything? How is it different when there's belief in self and other?
Mm-hmm.
How is that different when there is no self or other?
How's it the same? You asked me how it's different.
Yeah,
Well, how's it the same?
I don't know.
There's your answer.
I don't know what you mean.
I know. So what is your question again?
When there's belief in self and other,
Okay.
and you're resonating with whatever is happening with the
Yeah.
person in front of you, how is that different when there is no self or other?
I don't know. So what am I saying? I'm saying you're not going to know it. You're not going to know it. You're not going to actually have there won't be a past and a future to it. There won't be a time when you knew and when you didn't know. When you actually do know, you'll see that you've always known this. Yay. I win. So our emotional feeling when someone is feeling like, if we see the example I've used before, and I'll use it again because I'm not very creative. So here's a 10-year-old on a skateboard going down a sidewalk like crazy, and all of a sudden it hits a bump and he flies off and lands right on his knees. He's wearing shorts, and you see it. And you're not going to just look at that and think, that's really too bad. I'm glad that's not my knees. You actually will feel that. If you notice that, if you see something like that happen, you know exactly what, and you resonate with that feeling. And it's almost like you can feel something happening in your body. It's that kind of resonance. It happens before you even think about it. You can't help it. Does anyone not understand what I'm saying by that? So it's immediate. You see it, you resonate with it. It's intense, and it's not exactly like feeling sorry for someone. You haven't gotten to that point. You might feel sorry afterwards, which is more like thinking. But there's really not even any emotion in it. It's just this kind of a shock feeling when you see something like that happen. Like any of you are that were around when I think probably everybody was here when the Twin Towers went down. But that was really, to see that on television was like. That really would stop your thinking process. It was such a because our imagination went to it, and we would imagine all these people all jumping out and dying all at once. It's a horrible, horrible thing to see. So that kind of thing it's not exactly sympathy. It's like the underlying thing that we aren't separate. We aren't separate. So therefore that kind of thing gets triggered on a really basic level. So the same. Yes.
Two questions from Shane out in California.
Okay.
He says, "Happy Easter."
Is it Easter in California too?
Yeah.
It is. So that's not on the other side of the world.
Not yet.
Okay, not yet. Yeah, San Andreas Fault is slowly moving it that way.
Okay, so his I can read both questions at the same time.
That's fine.
Okay. He asks, "Why is it so difficult to hold your seat, even while you're telling yourself to hold your seat?" And his second question, "What's that deep desire to fix a situation instead of trust that it doesn't need correcting?"
Okay, so the first one, to hold your seat in the, as far as holding your seat, literally sitting on a cushion for as long as it is necessary to begin to train your mind, which is more than 10 minutes. To do that is try to do it with a schedule. That's why we have there's 6.5 hours of scheduled sitting meditation every day right here. If you came here and lived, you'd be meditating 6.5 hours a day, unless you have something else that came along. So it's trying to create a structure or form so you can even do such a thing, because it feels useless to sit. If you're sitting correctly, when I say sit down and just observe, the ego or the self-centered mind, it will come and say, "Well, this is crazy. Who come up with this dumb idea? We're going to sit down and turn into asparagus or vegetables, I guess. It's, if it doesn't feel valuable, you need to be thinking about stuff and judging and condemning and accepting and rejecting and finding the right way and getting rid of the wrong way, manipulating your life. Doesn't make that sound probably. So that kind of holding your seat. And then the other kind that I think that Shane is probably talking about would be the kind of holding your seat when someone you're there and someone is taking exception to something you're doing or criticizing you or doing something differently than you expected. Suddenly your expectations about, I thought you were gonna, didn't you say you were gonna fix the fence? Well, yeah, I'll fix it, but right now I gotta go to my poker club. I'm supposed to meet Judy out at the casino. And that takes precedence over fixing the fence. Just those kind of stories. So when you talk about holding your seat, the idea is to stay, when that happens, and try this out. And this may or may not work for you. When I say work, who knows what the hell that means. But I can say that it will give you more clarity around it if you're spending some time on the cushion and seeing and watching the way the mind moves. Then when you get up off the cushion, by holding your seat here, you'll find you'll be able to hold your seat in that kind of interaction when that person is not fulfilling your expectations. Instead of jumping at them or pointing your finger at them or being upset with them, you'll hold your seat and you will take responsibility for your negative feelings. When I say take responsibility, I'm just saying the ability to respond. When you have negative feelings, don't jump out of those as a platform to blaming. Even if the person's actually doing something, they're probably just triggering something. So awareness. And one of the ways you can hold your seat, one of the things that will help you, that is a kind of a pragmatic thing, is don't forget gravity. Don't forget that you're standing there. Don't forget your body language, what the person you're talking to, how they look. Don't forget the light that's in the room. Don't forget, don't ignore the sound, the traffic out on the road. Include everything else that's happening. By including everything, then that particular event, you don't get all absorbed into that kind of an event where you've totally blocked out everything else. If you do that, then it's delusion. You're to the extent that you do that, you're crazy. So is there another question?
Yeah, it was, what's that deep desire to fix a situation instead of trust that it doesn't need correcting?
because we want to meddle with everything. Anything that occurs, just do this as an experiment. Pick out 10 minutes, after you leave here, go do something else. Just pick out maybe a 5-minute period. Let's make it easier. You could do 4 if you want to. 5-minute period where whatever happens, you don't add anything to it. Something happens, no matter what happens, you don't add, I like it, I don't like it, that shouldn't be that way, they're wrong, I'm right, where you're doing none of that. And what will happen if you do that, if you take that attitude, you will notice that your mind spontaneously is interfering with everything. And so the practice part of it is you don't have to stop that. Isn't that nice? You don't have to be anybody other than who you are. But if you look at that tendency to keep wanting to fix things like Shane is asking about, just observe, and it will start to lose its fuel. Any kind of energy, anything that happens has to get its gasoline from somewhere. So snip the fuel lines. And how do you do that? You have to see where that's getting its fuel from. You go way back under instead of, if you go at it head on, it's like fighting ISIS. Or it's like fighting a war. But if you find out what's basically fueling it, like one of the things you could do is find out why those people are so unhappy. Negotiate with them. Well, I already know why they're unhappy because we've been sending drone planes and killing their families. Michael?
Today I hold my seat. Tomorrow I don't hold my seat.
That's awareness. All you have to do is watch. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And at some point, there won't be anybody. The seat will just be held. You just won't do it. And it won't be out of control. Control doesn't work. Yes.
So would another type of adding saying that the day I didn't hold my seat, I did wrong or I was bad? Is that in itself an addition?
Is it what?
An addition?
Yeah. Don't add. Don't do the math. Judging yourself is just extra. You're just putting more junk on this thing that you need to look at. Yes.
But I went ahead and added.
Then don't add to that. Yeah, you just have to stop somewhere. You might have 15 layers. Start with the 15th layer. See how that gets added. And then that will lose its energy. And then tomorrow you might have another layer. It's like an onion. An onion is still an onion, no matter how much you peel it, until you get down to the last layer. And then it's no longer an onion. And your eyes will stop watering. But you have to start somewhere. So it has a gradual quality to it. Questions? Yes.
Is holding your seat compassion?
Yes. Certainly is.
Does holding your seat mean not doing anything?
It's not that you're not doing anything, is that your motivation isn't coming out of you want to be the person who helps, or you see through your discursive thought or your pluses and minuses through your judgment that this is wrong and this is right, and you want to stop what's wrong and support what's right through your own confusion. But if you hold your seat, if you hold very still and you operate just out of awareness, then if it is necessary to, what we would say, beating a dog, you need to go and take that stick away from that person. I don't need to explain that to you, do I? And that's not meddling, but you're not separate from that situation. The dog can't do it, so it looks like you're elected. But you don't have to think about it to know. You just know that. Whereas the other ones are, well, you start to think about, should I, shouldn't I? Anytime you're unsure about something, stop. Don't do anything. If you think there's a fork in the road, you're wrong. Yes.
So you're then saying that someday you may have to pick up that sign.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and someday you may be, but most of the people, when I say most, I haven't interviewed them all, so I don't know, but probably most of the people who are carrying picket signs and objecting to this, whether it's for or against, are probably operating out of right and wrong and out of some people are bad and some people are good. It's picking and choosing. But there may be a time when that might be appropriate for you to do. But you would do it out of awareness and out of your intelligence and out of your clarity about what's happening, and out of compassion. And in other words, you'd resonate with the entire situation, including the people who are, so-called bad guys. I'm not saying we need to let anybody off the hook for anything, but I'm saying we need to realize that people that are on the other side are suffering also, having difficulty, or they wouldn't be doing such crazy things, wasting their whole life fighting, wasting their whole life going to war with everybody. And why? Stop and think. Why would somebody strap a bunch of bombs to themselves and go into rather than saying those people are bad, we've got to kill them? Well, they're already killing themselves to kill us, or to kill people who are trying to have a cup of coffee at a coffee shop. So what we need to do, when I say this, we need to find out, possibly find some way of talking and find out how can we fundamentally help those people where they're at, which is in the middle of really intense suffering. And I don't know of anybody that's doing that at all. Maybe.
A 3-part question from Anna Maria in Brooklyn.
Yes, Anna Maria.
First, can there be suffering that is not wishing things to be other than they are?
Well, there can be pain. There can be pain, but as far as the suffering we're talking about here is extra. There's just the pain of being alive. There's pain about being alive. Sometimes we feel okay. Sometimes we have a toothache. Sometimes we, all kinds of pain like that. But
The next question.
yes,
How does compassion relate to this? And then the last one is, what is the relationship between suffering and volunteer suffering?
volunteer suffering. It's noon. So someone should go and see if they need to leave, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So then last 2 questions. How does
Well,
compassion?
give me one at a time.
Okay.
It's hard enough to answer one of them.
Okay. Do you want the first one again?
There was a first one.
The pain, about the toothache. Okay. The next one is, how does compassion relate to this?
To what?
Suffering that is not wishing things to be other than they are.
That's too complicated.
And then our last question, what is the relationship between suffering and volunteer suffering?
So what Anna Maria is talking about, I think, is voluntary, what I call, and it's called by others, voluntary dissatisfaction or voluntary suffering is when you're actually volunteering. You're willing to sit down on a cushion for an hour, 2 hours, or whatever, and you're volunteering to experience dissatisfaction or suffering by watching the mind come and make things difficult. You're volunteering to see that. You're so interested in being honest, genuine, sincere, and knowing the truth for yourself. You're willing to go in and sit down and witness your mind constantly taking exception to things, pushing and pulling on things. And the other suffering is the kind of suffering that is so much undercover, is that it looks like it's caused by something else. It doesn't look like it's our responsibility. It just occurs, and it occurs by the underlying uninspected nature of the mind, which wants things to be different than they are, and actually has all kinds of things to back up why they should be. Are you taking notes on that? I hope you read them back to me later so I can hear what I said, hear what you think I said. Those are difficult questions to answer in a succinct way, because that whole area is very difficult. Those are strong concepts, and to go in with more concepts and try to take those concepts and you take a bunch of other concepts and somehow unpack that in such a way that it will help her, help Anna Maria, help you, Anna Maria, and help others. It's difficult to do that.
When's she coming back?
Yeah, we should ask her a question.
Yeah, why aren't you here? What are you doing in Brooklyn?
She has another question. Can volunteer suffering be compassion?
Oh, always voluntary suffering is compassion, is the beginning. It's kind of, it's the way you're compassionate for yourself, for your own life and your own body, mind complex. Here's this person who's come into the world who immediately, even when you're young, run into all kinds of difficulties and obstacles, and they don't necessarily lighten up. Sometimes they get more difficult. Well, sometimes they get easier. But what's being recommended is, I didn't start this practice sitting meditation until I was like 32, 33. Good idea to sit down, whether you're Buddhist or not, doesn't make that much difference. Makes some. But it's a good idea to sit down and relate to that difficulty in a way that is where you're actually to respond to the way she's asking the question, that you're actually, there's so much compassion happening there, or feeling with, that you're going to sit down and feel your feelings instead of do something else with your feelings. Feelings arise. I don't like that. The feelings arise. It's because of that. It's because of me. The self-blaming is just as difficult as blaming others. It's just as much under the radar of your understanding. That's it, Michael.
How is being aware, observing, and compassion linked?
Well, simply put, I would say that if you're aware, then the awareness is primary. Here's the thinking process that thinks up and down, back and forth, good and bad, right and wrong. And most people are operating with their awareness behind that. The awareness is just used to support that, or blend with it, or is mixed with it. But to one who is a meditator, over time, eventually that awareness starts to come out in front. You start to lead with your awareness. And it's difficult to do that, because that means when you walk into any situation, especially a new situation, you're not chattering to yourself about how you should be and what will people think and what will I do and how will I act if this happens or that happens. You just go in there, as they say, cold turkey. You just go in. You just, whatever happens, you relate to it on the spot. Awareness first. Awareness. So I'm not sure if I covered that question thoroughly.
Are you saying that as long as you're thinking about how I should take care of this person,
Yeah.
you're not really being compassionate?
Thinking should be a tool. No, it shouldn't be a dictator. Thinking should be a tool. You need to. When I say you need to, do whatever you want. But the way it looks here is get that awareness out in front, so you're leading with your awareness, and you know how that feels? Helpless, from the point of view of ego. But it's not so bad for ego to feel helpless, because ego starts to get on a really big diet then, and ego starts to lose weight and tell you need to change your ways, because the self-centeredness is seeping away more.
What is it that ego wants when you think you are being compassionate?
Yeah, it wants recognition. It's like, I helped you and you're not even grateful. You're not even, don't you realize how much I've helped? Don't you realize how much I'm trying to help you? It's like when your mother says, I'm just doing this for your own good. Wham. Or maybe they don't do that anymore. I don't know. This is for your own good. Bend over. Yes.
Is that feeling of superiority, not just
superiority?
Well, is that when we tend to separate ourselves then from the person?
I think so. There's a kind of a slight condescension happening there. They're the poor person who needs help, and I'm the person who's in pretty good shape, and I can afford to spend a few minutes with them. So, but quite often, and it's not about getting rid of that, because if you start getting rid of it, then you're building up then ego gets built up in another way. So it's the only idea of seeing it. You can't get rid of something that is unreal. You don't need to get rid of your ego. it seems real. And if I criticize you, if I pick someone out here and start even acting does it. If I start to, I've done this a few times, but I don't want to do it anymore because what if they start criticizing me? Then what do I do? So, but criticizing someone, if you have any little unresolved ego states or anything below the surface that could kind of hide out all the time, I come and I criticize you and I start taking your inventory, then you go, you feel those things that are unresolved start to come up. They start to come up and show up and start to resonate, or you hit that frequency. But if you've seen that that's unreal, then there might be a little bit of it, but not much. It doesn't mean that you're somehow beyond, you don't have any feelings or emotions. It's not saying that. Just saying that it doesn't take the form of a strong, what my teacher Trungpa Rinpoche used to call the bureaucracy of ego. It's like a little fortress. Nobody gets in without seeing, is this going to be harmful to me? Is this going to help me? Are they on my side? Or what's going on here?
So are you saying that as long as you're perceiving and there's something to be perceived, then you're not really compassionate?
I didn't say that.
Well, I did.
I know, I noticed that. But I'm giving the talk.
I'm just, well, is that what is going on in the mind?
Well, I don't know about that conceptual kind of structure there. I'm just saying that if you're really with somebody and helping them, then there won't probably be a lot of thinking going on about it, a little bit. But you won't notice that so much. The absence of thinking is you're just there. You see yellow, you see black, you see colors, you hear noises, you hear people yawn, you hear people snore, hear noises outside the building. So there's all kinds of things that are included. Not really too much to think about. The thinking is a tool that you can, when it comes time to use that it's very good to have. But to use that in order to live your life, it's kind of, then we start to live out of fear. What's going to hurt us and what's going to hurt that person who is assumed to be a separate being. It's not that we don't have separations. Obviously, we're all separate bodies, separate body minds, been around for different lengths of time. But the fundamental situation is not separate. More. We could close. Okay, we'll close. Dedicate to Mary.
In the back of your chant books is our final dedication of merit. We have a donation box in the hallway. It's the gold box. We appreciate any help we can get. Or online.
May the merits penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jio San Shi Shiru Shi Son Bu Sa Moko Sa Moko Hoja Uromi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita,